Did you know that losing muscle isn't actually an inevitable part of your story? Because most people wrongly believe that once you hit 60, the body just decides to shut down. You assume that weakness is just the price of admission for getting older. But what is actually happening inside your body is far more interesting and frankly much more reversible. It is not that your muscles are dying, but rather they are suffering from amnesia and literally forgetting how to listen to you, which is a problem we can absolutely fix. Today, I am going to walk you through a simple 1-minute movement protocol that has completely altered the lives of hundreds of my older patients who thought they were finished. These were people who had resigned themselves to the armchair, but who are now recovering their strength, their balance, and most importantly, their fierce independence. Let's talk about your morning when you wake up and swing your legs over the side of the bed, sitting there for a second because your legs feel heavy and dense. You stand up, and for a split second there is a tiny wobble. So you grab the nightstand, telling yourself you are just waking up. But a little alarm bell goes off. You walk to the grocery store, a trip you used to do in 20 minutes without sweating. But now halfway there you feel a drag, like your battery is flashing red. Those stairs that used to be nothing now look like a mountain. It's forcing you to stop halfway while pretending to look at something on the wall just to catch your breath. The voice in your head tries to normalize this by saying, "You are just aging, but I need to stop you right there, because this is actually a warning signal." It is a flashing red light on your body's dashboard telling you that a critical network is going offline as your muscles slowly disconnect from the brain's grid. Having spent over 25 years at the Mayo Clinic as a geriatric specialist, I have walked this road with thousands of people and dedicated my life to the science of active aging. Every single week, men and women come into my office looking defeated, telling me stories about falling from recliners or being unable to twist the lid off a jar of pickles. Beneath these stories is a shared belief that aging equals weakness and that muscle tissue is disintegrating. But I want you to visualize what is actually happening under a microscope. Imagine your muscles are like a lush, vibrant garden that doesn't die overnight when you stop watering it, but rather slowly fades as the color turns gray and the leaves droop. Here is the secret. If you water that garden again with the right nutrients and stimulus, it blooms again because the roots and the potential for life are still there. Your muscles are not dead but merely dormant, waiting for a signal that is currently too quiet. A whisper when it needs to be a shout to activate them. Most people wrongly think the solution is lifting heavy iron in a gym, but you don't need a membership or dumbbells. You just need 1 minute to activate a specific zone. This zone has been asleep for decades. While most think power comes from the big thigh muscles, the truth is much lower down in a place you probably ignore. This simple movement means the difference between living in a nursing home or your own home, giving you the ability to catch yourself when you trip on a rug. I have seen patients over 80 recover the firmness of their bodies, not by magic or pills, but because they learned how to reestablish the connection and rewire the circuit breaker. However, we have to navigate a common trap that catches almost everyone over 60, a mistake that actually accelerates muscle loss while you think you were doing the right thing. For decades, we have been fed a narrative that losing strength after 60 is a natural law, but that is one of the most dangerous lies in modern medicine. The truth is that the human body is not designed to shut down but to adapt as a survival machine. Yet most older adults are trapped by 3 specific myths. Myth number 1 is the protein trap. Because while protein is the building block of life, it is useless if the construction workers are on strike and nobody shows up. I have seen patients force themselves to eat massive amounts of protein and drink chalky supplements. Yet they still get weaker because the protein has nowhere to go. When you eat protein without the right high-priority signal from the nervous system, the muscle cell door stays locked and your body just flushes that expensive fuel away. Myth number 2 is the walking fallacy. Because while walking is wonderful for your heart and mood, it does not build the kind of explosive strength that saves you from a fall. Walking is a low-threshold activity that puts your legs on autopilot using slow-twitch endurance fibers, which are useless when you trip and need to snap back upright. If you only walk, you are exercising the surface while neglecting the foundation, allowing the deep stabilizers in your feet and hips to wither away from lack of challenge. Myth number 3 is the acceptance of decline, a mental virus where you resign yourself to weakness, causing your brain to stop fighting for strength and creating learned helplessness. Research on neuroplasticity proves that muscle cells can regenerate and nerves can sprout new branches even in people over 90, So the hardware is fine, but the software needs fixing. When you stand up and feel your legs go blank, it is not weakness but a neuromuscular disconnection, like a Wi-Fi signal buffering because the connection is blocked. We need to repair the pathway between the command center and the soldier, which requires a precise movement to wake the brain up and reopen the supply lines. When Don Luis walked into my office at 74, he looked much older with a specific look of fear and resignation, shuffling with tiny steps as if he didn't trust his feet. He had stopped going to the cafe and gardening because he was terrified of tripping. And he felt like his body was slowly disconnecting from reality despite normal medical charts. I asked him to take off his shoes and lift his toes while keeping his heels on the ground, but his feet barely fluttered despite the visible effort on his face. That was the moment I knew his legs weren't weak but blind. Because the phone line had been cut and his brain had lost communication with the critical stability muscles. Your feet are supposed to send thousands of signals to the brain about the ground, but when they stop talking, the brain panics and hits the brakes, causing stiffness. The cerebellum at the base of your skull controls balance and needs data from your feet, but decades of thick shoes and sitting cause those nerves to go to sleep. I challenged Don Luis to dedicate 1 minute a day to waking up his feet by simply sitting in a chair and performing a specific set of movements to reconnect the wires. 15 days later, he walked back into my office with a stride, his torso upright and a sharpness in his eyes, telling me he felt steady and mentally clearer. Studies show that stimulating the feet increases cerebral blood flow and improves cognitive function because waking up the nerves in your feet literally lights up your brain. Don Luis activated his body from the bottom up by lifting his toes, pressing them into the floor and massaging the ground to send a massive surge of information to the cerebellum. A month later, he was walking in the park without a cane, proving that youth isn't a date on a calendar, but the speed of connection between your will and your movement. This small movement creates a massive ripple effect because it acts like a wire brush scrubbing the oxidized nerves clean, restoring the electrical flow of your nervous system. We have talked about the why and the who, but now we are going to talk about the how to perform this neurostimulation. I want to be very clear that what we are about to do is not exercise in the traditional sense of burning calories or getting a sweat on. We are performing a precise electrical wake-up call from the furthest point of your body, straight to your brainstem, so treat this minute with respect. Don't do this while scrolling on your phone or eating, but give me 60 seconds of undivided attention because doing it mindlessly makes it useless. You don't need yoga mats or special clothes. Just find a sturdy chair where your feet can rest flat on the floor and sit forward slightly. Step 0 is the setup where you plant your feet hip-width apart. Feel the texture of the floor and take a deep breath to alert your nervous system. Phase 1 is the lift. The anti-trip mechanism where you keep your heels dug into the ground and lift your toes as high as you possibly can. Don't just lift them a little, but pull them up until you feel a distinct burn in the front of your shin, engaging the tibialis anterior muscle. This is the lifesaver muscle that lifts your foot so you don't trip over cracks. And in most older adults, this muscle is dangerously asleep. Hold that lift and squeeze it for 5 seconds, feeling a distinct tightness like a cable being pulled taut as the signal reaches the muscle. Phase 2 is the press, where you drop your feet and immediately push your toes and the ball of your foot hard into the floor. Imagine you are standing on wet sand and want to leave a deep imprint. Feeling the muscles in your calves tighten and the arch engage? This is the rooting phase that tells your brain where the ground is to create a stable base, so hold that pressure for 5 seconds. Phase 3 is the grind, where you relax the pressure but keep the ball of your foot on the floor and make small circular rubbing motions. Rub the floor with your toes like you are gently putting out a cigarette, creating friction and heat to stimulate the mechanoreceptors under your skin. By rubbing the floor, you are firing a machine gun burst of data to your cerebellum, clarifying the picture of the ground like cleaning a dirty lens. Phase 4 is the fan, the hardest but most important part, where you stop rubbing and try to spread your toes as wide as you can. Fan them out and then curl them in like a fist, repeating this open and close motion slowly, 10 times, even if it feels frustrating. That frustration. Is your brain trying to build a new road to a muscle it hasn't visited in years, so do not give up? Every time you try to move that toe, you are reinforcing the neural pathway and drilling the tunnel. So keep trying to open and close them. Stop for a second and just feel your feet, noticing if they feel tingly, warmer, or more present as blood floods the capillaries. That sensation is the hum of connectivity, telling you that your feet are now online, and if you stood up, you would feel lighter and solid. However, there is a TV trap that ruins this, where people flap their feet mindlessly while watching a soap opera instead of focusing. For this to work, you must look at your feet and visualize the muscle contracting, because the mind-muscle connection recruits 30% more fibers. Now, I promised you a secret booster, a tiny habit to stack on top of this routine that we use for advanced recovery cases. It involves a simple biological trick to hydrate your fascia, the connective tissue that wraps every muscle and nerve like a bodysuit inside your skin. When you are young, your fascia is wet and elastic, but as we age and sit too much, it dries out like a brittle kitchen sponge. If you try to move a muscle wrapped in dry fascia, it feels heavy and aches, blocking the electrical signals from your nerves. Electricity travels fast through water, but struggles through dry tissue. So drink 1 tall glass of room temperature water exactly 2 minutes before you move. This rehydrates the sponge, so when you lift your toes, your tissues are pliable, allowing nerve signals to travel at high speed without resistance. If you commit to this 1 minute a day plus the water, you are going to notice a ripple effect that changes how you sleep and feel. Within 2 weeks, you might notice deeper sleep because this rhythmic, focused movement pulls your brain out of stress mode and lowers cortisol. The biggest change is the silence of fear. As the background noise of worrying about stairs or ice goes quiet when your base is active, you stop looking at the floor and start looking at the horizon and the world around you. Because your brain finally trusts your feet again. Remember Don Luis, who thought his story was over, but simply needed to turn the page, because the body doesn't hold a grudge for past inactivity. Your body is incredibly resilient and is just waiting for you to send the signal that you are still the captain and still in charge. My challenge to you is to try it today and then type the word strength in the comments to declare you are not accepting the decline. Aging is not a loss of capability, but a shift in responsibility where you must now be the wise guardian who keeps the connections alive. You have the wisdom, the time, and now the tool, so keep moving, keep breathing, and never underestimate the power of a single minute. Thank you for your time and for trusting me with your health. Now go drink that water and wake up your feet.